You're standing in tall grass, and it's warm against your ankles. The wind smells like wet earth and green things growing. Somewhere close, water is running, a stream fed by ice melting 1,000 miles north. This is the best your world has been in 10,000 years. The glaciers are retreating, life is coming back. Then, one morning, the grass under your feet is frost, not cold, frost, in a place that hasn't seen a hard freeze in generations, and it doesn't warm back up next week, or next year. Ice cores pulled from Greenland show this shift may have taken as little as 3 years. Maybe 10, not centuries. Not a slow slide into a colder world. A door slamming shut. This isn't really a video about weather. It's about you, because if your ancestors were anywhere across the northern hemisphere 12,800 years ago, they lived through this, not read about it, lived it, watched the world they knew stop working inside a single childhood. Whatever happened to them next, how they fed themselves, kept warm, kept their children alive, is the reason you're alive to hear this story at all. That's the actual mystery here, not the ice, the people standing in it. Here's the first thing that should bother you. You probably picture an ice age arriving the way ice ages are supposed to. Slow, gradual, glaciers creeping south over thousands of years, plenty of time to adapt. That's not what this was. Central Greenland dropped by roughly 14 degrees Celsius, and scientists who've spent careers reading ice layers like tree rings say it may have happened within a single decade. Grandparents who remembered warm, green summers were burying grandchildren who'd only ever known frozen ones. Whole forests died standing up, replaced by bare tundra, in less time than it takes to raise a child. Here's what's fascinating. On the other side of the world from that Greenland ice core in what's now Syria, there was a village. Archaeologists call it Abu Hureyra, one of the oldest known human settlements on Earth. The people here were doing something remarkable for their time, experimenting with growing wild rye instead of only hunting and gathering for food. It's something like the first rough draft of farming. There were hearths still holding ash. Grain never collected. The ordinary leftovers of ordinary lives. Then, in that same narrow window 12,800 years ago, the ground at Abu Hureyra turns to glass. Not metaphorically. Archaeologist Andrew Moore and his team found actual melted rock and sand, fused into glassy fragments, buried in that exact layer of earth. Lab tests show it formed at temperatures above 2,200 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than lava. Hotter than a blast furnace. Hot enough to melt solid quartz sand into liquid glass in seconds. A cooking fire doesn't do that. A burning hut doesn't do that either. Here's how researchers know it wasn't just an ordinary blaze. They checked the melted grains for the magnetic signature that lightning strikes leave behind, and found none. They checked whether the glass held water, the way it would if it had formed slowly inside a house fire. It didn't. It was bone dry, closer to the tektite glass that forms when something slams into loose sand at incredible speed. Piece by piece, scientists are running something close to forensic analysis on a crime scene 12,800 years cold, reading clues smaller than grains of salt. It's prehistoric CSI, and until recently, this case had gone unsolved for longer than civilization itself has existed. And Abu Hureyra isn't alone. In that same narrow slice of time, dozens of giant animals across an entire continent vanish almost at once. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, camels, native horses. Nearly 40 kinds of large mammal, some that had survived every ice age swing for the last 100,000 years, gone within what looks geologically like a single instant. Around the same moment, an entire human tool-making tradition in North America, the Clovis culture, disappears from the archaeological record. So what actually caused all of this? The frost, the glass, the vanished animals, the vanished world? Here's where it gets genuinely strange, because there isn't one clean answer, and researchers have argued about it for decades. One camp says a wall of glacial meltwater broke loose from a prehistoric lake bigger than all 5 Great Lakes combined, flooded into the North Atlantic, and shut down the ocean current that keeps the North warm. Like unplugging a heater in the middle of winter. That's solid, well-tested physics. It just doesn't explain melted glass in Syria. A second camp says a comet, breaking apart in the atmosphere, exploded over the ice sheet and torched sites from Syria to South Carolina in the same geological instant, scattering platinum and microscopic diamonds into the soil on 4 continents. That would explain the glass, and the sudden extinctions, and the frost. But despite decades of searching, nobody has ever found the crater. A third camp isn't convinced either dramatic explanation is even needed. Climate systems, they argue, sometimes flip this fast, entirely on their own. No cosmic trigger required. Earth has done it before, in other icy stretches of its past, long before any comet needed to show up and take the blame. If a torched Ice Age village that's kept scientists arguing for 20 years doesn't sell you on how wild this period of history actually was, nothing will. This channel exists to dig through the real peer-reviewed research behind moments like this one. And hand it to you straight. That's your kind of rabbit hole. You know what to do. Here's the layer most people miss completely. You'd assume the scary part of this story is how the cold arrived. It isn't. Here's the number that should actually stick with you. When this cold snap ended, around 11,700 years ago, Greenland's temperature rocketed back up by as much as 10 degrees Celsius in under a decade. A shift that, under normal gradual climate change, might take 10,000 years happen twice. Once going in, once coming out. Each one faster than it takes a kid to finish elementary school. And here's the layer that recontextualizes everything again. None of this is settled history. It's still moving under our feet, right now, in the scientific literature. Just this year, a major study claiming fresh impact evidence at a Younger Dryas site was formally retracted after other scientists found problems with how the samples were dated and collected. And a different crater, once floated by some researchers as the smoking gun, a massive one buried under a Greenland glacier, got redated using two separate methods and turned out to be 58 million years old. Real. Catastrophic. And completely unrelated to any of this. It struck when Greenland was a rainforest full of alligators, tens of millions of years before the first humans existed. The evidence keeps shifting even while we're standing on it. So here's the honest answer. We don't know whether something fell from the sky 12,800 years ago. What we do know, without any argument at all, is that the world your ancestors were born into ended faster than it takes to grow up. And a new one began just as fast on the other side of it. Somewhere in that decade of chaos, without agriculture, without metal tools, without any warning system except each other, enough of your ancestors made it through to keep the line going. So the next time frost catches you off guard on a morning that should have stayed warm, remember this. Somewhere back along your family line, someone stood in grass just like that, watched it turn white overnight, and had no warning at all. You're only here to feel that frost because they've found a way through it.